Here's another one of my cool tools that I use a lot. This is a guitar setup jig that I made, and some of you who see this will be reminded of the StewMac string tension simulating jig that they sell. And this was based on one of their early designs, and I've kind of modified it a little bit. It's basically just a 2x4 it's 44 inches long, and it runs through the length of the jig, and if you look underneath it you can see kind of how that works. At the end is a 2x4, and then at about the center is another 2x4, and attached to the top is a 3/4 inch thick piece of plywood, which has been attached with wood screws down the length, and then along the 2x4s at the middle and at the back. In the 2x4s at the front or at the middle, I've drilled a couple of holes on either side, and those are designed to allow me to use a clamp to clamp it down to my workbench if necessary. And along this length of 2x4, which is extending out from the front, I have some steel rods which slide up and down. And this one is about 2 inches in from the end. This one is 6 inches from this one. This one is 4.5 inches from that one. And then this last one is 4 inches from this one. And to hold those in place, I have 1/4x20 thumb screws which run into these threaded inserts. And these are the same kind of threaded inserts that you'll find at the hardware store in furniture repair hardware. And all I have to do is raise it up, and then I can turn the thumb screw to hold it into position. Now you'll notice that there's a couple of other threaded inserts here, and these originally were used to hold a pair of dial indicators, which I used to simulate string tension, but I found it to be unnecessary and a bit of a kind of a frustrating idea. So I took them off, and all I use the jig for now is to place the guitar on when I do my setup. And in most cases what I'm doing is I'm attaching the neck by itself. And the way I've done that is I've got this block of maple, and I drilled a couple of holes which correspond to holes, the neck mounting holes in the heel of the neck. And then there's a couple holes up here which correspond to some threaded inserts on the center line. And then all I have to do is line it all up, and then I can attach it with a pair of bolts that run through it and screw into it, and that holds the neck into position along the center line. Then I can just raise up those steel rods until it supports the back of the neck, and then tighten them down. The whole thing works pretty well, and it makes leveling and crowning frets much easier and more accurate. And then later on, when I'm doing other setup work, what I can do is I'll lay a piece of carpet onto this plywood surface, and then I can set the entire guitar on it and do the remainder of my setup work. So it's really very simple, easy to make, inexpensive to make, and it's portable. And I think you'll find a tool like this to be really useful when setting up your guitars or doing any sort of basic guitar work. Okay, so this is how I use my guitar setup jig when I want to level, crown, dress, and polish frets on a new guitar neck. First thing I'll do is I'll attach the neck by itself to a block of maple, and it's attached using a pair of wood screws that run through the block and into the existing neck mounting holes in the heel of the neck. And then I'll attach the block of wood to this plywood base with a pair of 1/4x20 bolts running through a pair of washers through the block and into threaded inserts that are in the plywood. But before I tighten those bolts down, what I like to do is to move the neck side to side to make sure that the center line of the neck is directly over the center line of the 2x4. And once I'm satisfied that it's centered appropriately, then I'll tighten down those bolts. Next, I'll take a precision straight edge and lay it down on the center of the fretboard and make sure that the fretboard is dead level. Now, the way I make my necks is I strive to make sure that the neck and fretboard are dead level with the truss rod in the neutral position, and that's usually how they end up. However, sometimes because of temperature and humidity variations, there can be sometimes a slight bow in the neck when I get to this stage, and if that's the case, I can just do a slight adjustment on the truss rod to bring it back to dead level, because I like to level my frets with the fretboard dead level. So once I'm sure that the neck and the fretboard are level, what I'll do is I'll raise up these steel rods. As you can see, they have rubber tips, and that comes into contact with the back of the neck along its length. And then I'll tighten the thumb screws so that the rods don't, when under pressure, slide back down into the 2x4. They stay stationary, stay put. And then at this stage, I'm ready to begin leveling, crowning, dressing, and then polishing the frets. So that's just one of the ways that I use this jig. When I'm ready to do the final setup on a guitar, I can strap it down to the jig just like you see here. And what I do is I went to the dollar store and I pick up these. They're a mattress protection pad. I think it's mainly for bedwetters. I'm not sure, but it comes 2 to a packet for $1. And then I also will pick up a couple of these. They're really soft towels or cloths. I don't know. They're great for polishing guitars, but they're also good for setting the guitar on it so it doesn't scratch the finish. And then to hold the guitar in place, it's just a simple strap with a clasp. It's one of these squeeze type things where I can squeeze that and then pull the strap through. And then I just put a couple of paper towels down to protect the surface while I strap it down. And I don't have to pull the straps too tight. I just put enough on there to keep it from moving around. And then I have another very similar strap at the front, same type of clasp that's underneath. And then once I raise these support rods up into place, then I can tighten this down. And if I want to, I could put a piece of paper towel over this, but it's not as big a deal. I'm not using as much force to hold it in place, and it stays pretty rigid. It's not going to move at all. And then I can go ahead and do, adjust the action, test the electronics, tune it, intonate it, make sure everything is good to go. So that's pretty much how I use this little homemade jig. So if you don't have one and do a lot of work on guitars, I definitely recommend you consider putting one together. You can probably do it with some scraps you have in your garage, and it'll cost you nothing.